he has to prevent himself from he becomes a Nazir because he wants to prevent himself from doing something inappropriate. So what do we know about that? It means that the Nazir, really, even though Nazir is considered someone we think is someone like he's on a higher level, he's actually doing his Nazirut for what reason? To prevent himself from sinning. So in some ways, he's trying to do something. He has a cheshek to do something, and he wants to. The cheshek he's either going to do is either I'm going to be over the sin, and therefore my Yetzer Hara is taking over, or I'm going to take upon myself some sort of nizirut to reduce my desire and increase my connection to Hashem. Right? That's why I bring a korban chatat at the end of.
This is something that happens to see what's going on.
No, that's the Rashi. Rashi says haroet sota. Here it says here.
Because otherwise, every color would have to do it.
Right. So he says. Rashi says. He says here. Lama nismecha. Rashi. It's a famous Rashi. Lama nismecha Parshat Nazir leParshat Sota. Why did the Parshat Nazir come right after Parshat Sota? L'malacha shekol haroet sota b'kukula yazir atzmo min hayam shehu mevi lidei ni'uf. He says that anyone who sees a sota, Rashi says that anyone who sees a sota doing what she's doing, he says, I have to take upon myself becoming a Nazir to prevent wine, so that way I don't get to that point. Meaning, that's what it says. That Rashi's again. Rashi says it. He says, I'm preventing myself from enjoying wine because I don't want to get to that point what I just saw. That's again, overall, Nazirus is not meant to be something that you do as a sign of closest to Hashem, but rather you're trying to eliminate or trying to reduce some sort of, let's call it a ta'ava that you may have, and so in order to do that, you take away things from your life. In order to pre-shoot, you're poresh yourself from certain things, cutting your hair, access to touching or being around dead people or tuma.
He takes inside, he has to do all the elements of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not just the one.
You can't just do one, absolutely. But that is again, with the time of the Beit HaMikdash, with the time of the Mishkan, nowadays there are people who are Nazirim. There was a famous Nazir, the student of Rav Kook was a Nazir, but yeah, there's one in town, yeah. There are a couple of them. If you listen to Rav Daf Yomi, Toskansi, he interviewed, yeah. So that's a different kind of Nazir. There are other Nazirim who claim to be Nazirim. Either which way, a Nazir at the time of the Mishkan and the Mikdash is someone who takes upon himself a minimum of 30 days, and he does it and he says, I'm not going to have wine, I'm not going to be mitameh to metim, and I'm also not going to cut my hair. And at the end of the 30-day period, or whatever he accepts upon himself, minimum 30 days, he then shaves his head, he then then he brings a korban chatat, and the reason why he brings a korban chatat is because he prevented himself from drinking wine, which is meant to be something that you're supposed to enjoy. You just have to control, obviously, but you have to prevent he's doing it. So now the Zera Shimshon has an interesting question.
Where?
What? Drush Chet. 8.
Someone takes
Right,
today,
no pun
they're
intended.
stuck.
No pun intended.
What?
Someone takes on the promise today, they're stuck.
They are stuck. There's a very big problem doing it now, and that you really have there's very little to. What? Chet.
Both types of
Yeah.
zeros?
No.
Shimshon, I think, is
Zera Shimshon. There's one called Zera Shimshon, which is like really. Zerut Shimshon. Why did I say Zera? Nizirut Shimshon, and then there's Nizirut, like there's Stam Nizirut. Nizirut Shimshon basically means like today you cannot get out of it. There's no way you can't go to a Beit Din now and say undo
So
it.
these guys are running around, mostly it's in Shimshon?
Are Nizirut Shimshon? Yeah, they're basically saying is we took it upon ourselves for the rest of our lives.
Wow.
Yeah, so they don't drink wine. So what do they do on Kiddush and everything like that? You can ask him if you look at the interview. The other was regular Nazirut, rather Nazirut than that. You can, if you make a swear Shavuot saying I'm not going to do it,
How do you know that's not them?
because they don't have a way to undo the Shavuot.
It's the first or the second?
The first one is if I find a Beit Din in the time of the Mishkan or the Mikdash.
That's the one that's Shimshon you cannot undo.
Correct.
So wouldn't you say that once the guys running around are probably not doing that one, they're doing?
No, they're the opposite. They don't have a way. They do it, take it upon themselves, but now they don't have a way to get out.
You have to bring a korban.
You have to bring a korban. So if you can't bring a korban,
Why can't they do the other lighter one to get out?
because they can't get out. How are they getting out?
Understand? They both can't get out, or only one can?
One can get out after 30 days and say I bring a
Why
korban,
can't they do that one?
because they don't have a way to bring a korban.
So they both can't get out.
I have a friend who did it, and he was becoming religious. He's like, okay, I'm going to set restrictions, and he made the promise, and now he's like 100% religious, but he can't get out of it.
But the Beit Din, it's not Beit Din is not enough. because you have to bring Nazirut. A Nazirut nowadays.
You wouldn't know, I'm afraid.
No, maybe, but even
For sure.
yeah, there is again. I don't want to go into the detail.
I'm confused a little bit here.
Okay.
Neither of them you can get out?
Today, nowadays,
Today, neither.
neither of them basically you can get out of. Right, correct. Basically, it's very difficult. I would have to say that, yeah. But most of them view it as a Nazirut of it's called Nazirut Shimshon. Either which way. This last Drush spoke about the fact that the Nazir, in order to prevent himself from doing a Chet, he does is he takes upon himself Nazirut for a certain amount of time to kind of say, I need to reduce my Yetzer Hara. And with that in mind, he now goes to the Zera Shimshon, takes quotes from Tehillim in Perek Kaf Hey, Drush Chet, on page Kuf Tzadi Zayin. Yeah, it's a short one. It's a short one, but it's a very powerful one. So, and also based on time, I'm looking at it as well. So he says, Pnei Elai v'choneni ki yachid v'ani ani. So the pasuk in pasuk Perek Kaf Hey 25 of Tehillim, it says, "Turn to me, Hashem," meaning show me favor. Pnei Elai, Hashem, David HaMelech is asking him after this is, he's saying is, Hashem, turn to me and show me favor. Because why? Because I'm alone and I'm impoverished. Meaning that the whole pasuk needs a lot of questions. He has a question either, Matam hu zeh sheyifnei elav mipnei shu yachid, right? Why is it that he's alone, and therefore Hashem should turn to him? Right? That's question number one. Meaning, why is David Melech saying is, I'm alone, so therefore Hashem, please listen to what I'm asking. Right? V'ha d'rabba hein el kabir lo yimas. Right? We know the Gemara in Brachot, Daf Chet says that we should have, or what as we call it, what we say, Barov al Hadrat Melech. Right? When you want something, you want to have a big crowd to respect it and to encourage people to get the answer that you want from Hashem. Right? Right? Wouldn't it be better for him to actually say, I'm with a group of people? Right? Now he also says, how could he say that he's alone and impoverished, meaning poor? Right? Why? He's David HaMelech. David HaMelech is the ultimate rich. He's got everything.
The answer is friends with sins.
Okay. So that you've just given. Thanks. We'll close the book now. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so he says, right? So he says, right? So exactly. So how can he be considered poor? Right? V'yesh lomar, like you said, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, "Shelo hayat David ra'ui le'oto ma'aser." David, and this is the interesting point because we mentioned it, and we mentioned it earlier in Drush around the time of Chet HaEgel. We said that Bnei Israel, one of the reasons that Hashem that Moshe kind of, if we could, like had a claim against Hashem, saying is Hashem with the time of Chet HaEgel, Moshe said to Hashem, the whole point of them sinning was to teach the Rabbim, teach the group what the power of tshuva is. And here's the same thing. He says David was not really, meant to. If you say, he says ra'ui to perform the sin that he did with Bathsheba. Ela she'im chata yachid. Rather, it's him to think about another individual, namely, to teach. Rather, she'im chata yachid omrim lo. The Gemara about Avodah Zarah says, Daf Daled says, which is actually another Daf Yomi reference, which is coming up soon. He says that tell us if anyone sins and they say, "Oh, I've got nowhere to turn." They say, "Look at David HaMelech. David HaMelech did the ultimate sin, and he was proving to everyone that a yachid can do tshuva." Right? He took the heat, meaning David HaMelech realized that he was at a different level, and even him at a different level. He says to Hashem, "I'm willing to take that responsibility." And here he says, "Kolomar sha'ayakadosh baruch hu ozro." Right? Hashem was in some way helping him, really, quote unquote, helping him defeat his Yetzer Hara. Right? As it says, that the tzaddikim, Hashem will not let his Yetzer Hara, kind of overcome him. In this case, Hashem did allow it to sin in order to teach us that there's the value of tshuva for an individual. Right? The Gemara there states that Hashem, similar to the Chet HaEgel, there are two times that Hashem created the scenario in which, even though the people overall were not ru'uyim, meaning that they were at a different level, and therefore they should not have sinned, Hashem created it, whatever this means. Hashem put them in the scenario to teach, whether it's the individual with David HaMelech or the group like the Chet HaEgel, to teach us a lesson about the value of tshuva, to teach us that we can do tshuva. Tshuva is possible. And now he says, Lachen Amar David, and that's why Hashem says that's why David HaMelech says to Hashem, Pnei Elai, turn to me, even though I did sin. Right? The reason why I sinned was because I'm taking the responsibility. I realize that I'm doing the sin that I'm committed, that the sin that I committed was for one reason, to teach people a lesson. Hashem, you have to turn to me. And that's why he says, because this, I was impoverished, like you said, impoverished from Hashem's assistance, meaning Hashem's ability to save David HaMelech and all tzaddikim, right? I didn't get that extra boost from Hashem to protect me from the Yetzirah. So it was specifically David HaMelech was an individual that Hashem did say to him that you will sin, or that Hashem helped, enable the sin in order to teach us a lesson about tshuva. So David HaMelech was not saying that he was alone, but that he was an individual, meaning he's a yachid. Right? A yachid can mean either I'm alone or I'm an individual. Right? So I'm a yachid, ki'ani ani. So he's saying I was an individual, meaning that, and it was for this reason that he was considered poor. Not from material goods, because he wasn't poor from material goods, but rather from Hashem's assistance in being able to be kovesh his yetzer. So therefore, David HaMelech is turning to Hashem and says, turn to me and show me favor. Why? That is, I should not lose favor in your eyes, even though I sinned, right? My sin would usually cause someone to lose favor in Hashem's eyes, or Hashem to lose favor in, to be lost or on a lower level in Hashem's eyes, because it was you, and because David Melech is saying is, I'm an individual. I took the heat to be an individual and to be an example for other people to learn that individuals can do tshuva, and therefore you enabled, in some way you enabled this Chet to happen. In order for me to teach a lesson for moving forward, for the power and to teach a lesson of tshuva, David HaMelech is saying is that I was considered ani, I was considered impoverished, and I was considered an individual. And because I was an individual who's willing to take the responsibility and willing to bear the burden of the sin, I want you, Hashem, to turn to me. So he's telling us this valuable lesson of that an individual can do tshuva, and even David HaMelech, who sinned at a level of sin, he was willing to take that responsibility. If you take the responsibility serious to do tshuva, then we can learn from David HaMelech a lot. And also, he's saying that even individuals and even people who are considered tzaddikim can slip up and can mess up and can do tshuva. So he's saying is that Hashem, you created this situation. Now I want you to also do is to turn and turn favor in your eye. Turn favor in your eyes to help me get through it and to allow me to emerge at a higher level. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'Amen.
So Mordecai